Casting a new light, token on the highlight, present for my hometown. How you feeling today? Straight from the sunlight, darkness in my mind's eye. Fresh from the satellite to say hi, hi, hi. How you feeling today? Today, babe. No. Today. Today. In a new light, token on the highlight, present for my hometown. How you feeling today? Straight from the sunlight, darkness in my mind's eye, fresh from the satellite, saying hi, 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 hi. I hear the voices calling up my name, telling me, give it up for tea, give it all, live another day. Wave of the century, crashing on a bad wave. Secret is the unseen. How you live on my own pride. Chill it out from the inside. Gonna take it to the spotlight. Say hi. I'm calling up my name, telling me, give it up for tea, give it all, live another day. I wanna spend this life trying to make things right. I'm not gonna waste my time in the cage. I'm not gonna waste my time in the cage. So how you feeling today? How you feeling today? How you feeling today? Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Octatrack video. This week I started with a performance of the first track off of my set from this past Saturday. And I just wanted to use that as a jumping off point to talk about how I've personally applied some of the things I've learned to a live setting. I'm working with a track, in this case, Feeling Today, which is an original track that I produced and wrote and sang. And I'm trying to incorporate it into a live performance. And so this was how I did it, and hopefully that can inform your own experience. So to begin with, we should probably talk about routing. And it's going to get complicated because I have multiple parts. But just to start out, we are working off of bank 1. I have my set organized so that every track is a different bank. And that gives me 4 parts per track. So that gives me a bit more versatility instead of having to remember that, you know, parts 1 and 2 are one track, parts 3 and 4 are a different track. So I just stick with 1 bank per track, and then that gives me 4 parts. So in the beginning, I have a pretty involved section where I'm only really focusing on the OB6 here. And so these other instruments, you can kind of ignore them for now. I do have a mic in, which isn't active right now because I switched over to Ableton's mic so I can mix this later better. But essentially the only things that are active right now in this particular pattern, which is pattern 16, are these two channels and or these two tracks which are playing the OB6. It just gives it it's a through track and a neighbor track, and the neighbor track is giving it an extra 2 effects. And the two tracks over here, 5 and 6, are the through track and neighbor track for my voice. So in this first part, I have an ARP playing through MIDI. And this ARP is playing indefinitely because I have an arrangement mode set up. I have this loop set up that's basically just looping pattern 1 over and over and over again, or row 1 over and over again. And so this is a great way for me to kind of warm up, get myself situated on stage. And not only that, but I've mapped some scenes to it as well. And remember that parts are specific to, have a specific set of scenes. So if you switch to part 2, you could copy over your set from part 1, your set of scenes, or you can just create an entirely new set of scenes to play with. So in this particular case, I'm using only like 2 scenes per part most of the time because I don't want to be, rummaging around in my scenes while I'm like trying to perform at the same time. So in this particular case, I have an introduction, and what this scene is doing specifically is it is taking the LFO, and you'll notice in here, it's taking the time of the delay and adjusting it ever so slightly back and forth. So that creates this kind of phasing effect because the delay on the Octatrack has sort of a tape modeling effect, so it kind of pitches things up and down as you speed up the time. So I wanted it to be kind of this wavy effect. It also increases the reverb in the neighbor track. So that's why I have this neighbor track, is I wanted it to kind of fluctuate in its reverb mix and its delay. I should also mention that I have a foot pedal underneath my keyboard, which is controlling the filter on this. So if you hear the filter moving around, it's because I'm controlling it with my foot. So this gives me something to play with, just like an introductory thing. All right, so this next section, the easiest way to describe it is in these 3 sections here, because in the original track, which I'll link in the description, the ARP kind of moves up and down a few pitches, and I described this in my last video actually, but I found out that in arrangement mode, you can use these different rows to transpose your MIDI up and down different pitches. So all I did was I told it to play the same pattern, but just transposed in different places until the big drop of the song, so to speak. So I'll just play it real quick so you can hear it. I should also add that I have this particular track on a high pass. I have this scene mapped to a high pass now. So once I switch over to this section A1 from A16, my arrangement has told it to go from scenes 1 and 2 to 1 and 3. And scene 3 here is actually a high-pass filter, which sweeps across to finally let in the full signal of the instrumental. So I kind of just gradually pull this across usually when I'm performing. There's a part where I cut it out. At the same time, I'm kind of modifying this modulation here, and I'm adjusting the filter at the same time. This is where the transposing is taking place. And then I have, before I continue here, you'll see that this, this part here still in the intro section, but once again, the scene has shifted. So where the high pass had kind of sweeped all the way to let in the full filter, now my B section is stuck on 3. You'll see in there, it says 3. But then on the left, the A scene has switched to 4. And so what I have mapped to 4 is, this is so complicated. So in this scene, right before my drop, I have my master channel sending a lock command. So basically this delay is set to lock, which means when the send goes to 0, it'll actually like lock the last signal that came in and then delay it at that speed until it kind of dissipates. So right, so it goes straight to the next section there. And now I'm set back to scene A. All right, so once I hit scene A, I'm working with 3 different static machines here. And each of these static machines has been sliced in particular ways. So in this particular section, I'm starting on the drop, but my song doesn't start on the drop, and neither does my file. So in order to figure out exactly where that is, I had to go into my file one by one and find the spot where that drop was. In the beat, it was a lot easier to find because it's so distinct. You can tell exactly where it is. So I basically found this exact spot. I zoomed in really close, and then I looked for this number here, like 224,287. And then I went to every other track, so I went to my instrumental as well, and I scrolled all the way to 220. Right here. Yeah, so this would be 224,287 right here. This is basically the same spot. Because now I have it set to play slice 2, and this is also playing slice 4. This is playing slice 2. So basically, those slices are corresponding to the exact spot in those stems that line up in the song. And I had to painstakingly do this by hand because the Octatrack doesn't have any kind of like auto-detecting feature of timing, which makes sense because we're working with audio and it's not Ableton. So so it took a lot of time to put this together. But anywho, so basically from that point on, this song is playing on rails, and then I have certain ways that I affect it. Personally, the main thing that I do with the crossfader in this section is I have this this locked delay that I brought up earlier. And what I like about it is that it doesn't actually affect the backup vocals, so I can kind of do this. And kind of like create emphasis on the vocals without like making things too glitchy, you know? Some other details about this particular section. Before in my part 4, since I needed 2 neighbor tracks, I moved my synth over to these 2 tracks. By default, I like to have my synth over here, my synth through track, and I'll show you in this track. Yeah, so usually my format is I have these 2 tracks dedicated to my vocal and its neighbor for delay and reverb, as well as compression, filters, stuff like that. And then I have a third track here dedicated to my like outboard synth. I have B enabled because sometimes I use like a different input for that. But then over here I keep all of my like samples, my stems. I keep a looper up here in case I want to record. And so like that looper is usually tied to something on the right side, so that I can kind of loop something live. I still haven't done that yet, but I know that in the future I'll probably want to play with that, so I kind of leave that there. But that being said, in my first section, in order to sort of problem solve the issue of having only one space here, and I knew I wanted to have reverb and delay, I just saved a different part 4, and dedicated that to having my synth over on this side, knowing that I wasn't going to need as many tracks for my stems because I'm just introing the song. Another thing I learned actually just this past performance was, and actually I probably should have learned this earlier, but I'd practiced so much in my home that I didn't account for the fact that the compression I was putting on my vocal was going to be too strong and create a lot of low end feedback. So during my live show, I had a lot of issues where like there was a lot of low rumble, and luckily I had a filter here. So basically, I had to remember with every single track that I started playing, I had to roll up the low end on the filter so that I could cut out some of that feedback. What else? Yeah, so that's kind of the main thing with the audio effects. I should also go into the MIDI section as well a little bit. So you'll notice that the ARP is off here. I'm not using an ARP within the OB6. I'm actually using the one on the Octatrack, but I P-locked it to every single key. And I did that because I wanted to be able to start the set just kind of improvising on my own. So one thing I noticed was if I have the ARP on, set to true for the whole track, then it affects my performance. Which is pretty annoying. So instead of doing that, I basically just P-locked the ARP to be on for all of the programmed MIDI. And so what that allows me to do is just, since I know that it's going to start on 8, but I really want to improvise with 7, I'll switch over to 7 before my performance starts, and I'll kind of like do some... something like that. And then once I'm ready to start the set, I hit reload. The patch resets to 8, and then I can get started. Well, that's everything for this week. If you guys enjoyed this particular style of dissecting a performance, a song, let me know in the comments, and I have tons more. I did an hour-long set, so I have a lot of different songs that I've used different methods to problem solve or to sample and kind of trigger little arpeggios and different things like that. So if this is interesting to you, definitely let me know, and maybe I'll start a series on some of my tracks and how I work them behind the scenes. All right, thanks for watching. See you next week.